Today is July 13th, 2020, and we had a new banned and restricted announcement come out. We have got historic bans, modern bans, pauper bans, and pioneer bans to discuss.
What does it mean for these formats? We're about to get into that and more. Video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We've got to discuss the July 13th BNR that hit multiple formats, and it was a lot of cards affected. But first, if you like the video by the end of it, and you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It would really help us out.
It's the best way to support the channel with just the click of a button.
Just a quick note before we jump into this. Right now we are running a special on our Patreon. You get a free sticker if you sign up. We have our first edition stickers, very limited supply. Go check out our Patreon. Link is down in the description below.
And so we have cards that were banned, we have cards that are unbanned, we have cards that went from suspended to banned. Does suspended just mean banned? I'm pretty sure that it does. Let's talk about it.
July 13, 2020 BNR announcement. Jake, let's start with historic. We had Agent of Treachery, Winota, and Fires that were all suspended, and they have been banned outright.
So let's clear up what suspended means versus banned, because as far as I can tell, it doesn't mean... It's like suspended means you go on a watch list, and then banned is like, we moved you from the watch list to banned. We put you on suspended first so that people wouldn't absolutely freak out, and then once it was out of their mind, we moved you into banned completely. Does suspended even mean that you can run a one-of copy of the card?
No.
How does that work?
Suspended,
it just means it's banned.
Yeah, it just means it's banned. They've promised in the past, right here, when they first introduced the mechanism in December, we emphasized that suspensions were going to be limited time, because at first people were like, oh cool, suspension is a way for you to get around giving us wild cards back for cards that are banned now.
Sure.
But essentially that's not what's happening. Apparently, I mean, every card that we've seen suspended, I believe, has been moved to banned not long after, and it's just the nature of it. I mean, honestly, these three, leave them banned. I don't care. It's wild that this was just printed. I mean, we already know that Fires was in Eldraine, which was just a set of pushed cards and
let's
free
talk about
stuff.
the one that's really a wild card.
Yeah, I mean...
Because, like, Nexus, like, I get that Nexus went.
Yeah.
I get that all of these went. Even Winota a little bit. Winota got out of hand really quick. I didn't realize the power level of that card. But let's talk about Burning Tree, which was created specifically for Historic.
Printed specifically into Historic, yeah.
Or printed specifically into Historic. Obviously, it was printed before in paper. But this card was specifically put into the Historic bundle as an incentive if you buy this bundle. And now this card has been moved to suspended, which likely will lead to it being banned. Is this card just too good? What are your thoughts on this card?
No, the problem is, Jake, is that Embercleave is just too good. Embercleave makes everything so you have to play either hyper aggro or these really greedy removal, board wipe, go long, combo, Nexus decks. Okay, this is not banning the problem. This is banning a symptom of the problem. Having a bunch of 2/2s on the battlefield doesn't really do that much. But if you can have multiple Burning Trees in your hand opening turn, or first couple of turns, get 3 or 4 creatures onto the battlefield, and all of a sudden your opponent is incentivized not to block, which completely destroys mid-range as a strategy. The thing with mid-range as a strategy is that it can either be aggressive to the control decks or responsive to the aggro decks. Okay, and that's what is a healthy format. That's what indicative of a healthy format to me. A really strong, fast aggro deck that burns out, really good mid-range deck that can either respond to the aggro decks or burn them down with the control decks, and then control deck. Burning Tree Emissary is, all it does is enable you to get a lot of creatures onto the battlefield very quickly so that you can have an Embercleave on turn 3 or 4 for 2 mana. Because it's not that hard to
theory,
get.
You could Elf turn 1 and then turn 2 Burning Tree, Burning Tree, Burning Tree, Burning Tree. Obviously, that's extremely unlikely.
Very rare, but it is not. It's not uncommon for you to go turn 1 Fervent Champion, turn 2 Burning Tree, Zerta Goblin, turn 4 Fervent Champion, swing 4 creatures, Embercleave for 2 mana. I mean, that's not that difficult to pull off. I've played the Gruul deck a lot. You know I like aggro, and I do that all the freaking time. So the thing is not Burning Tree, it's that Embercleave is still a card in aggro, and it seems like that's what they want the aggro deck to have. They want to de-incentivize blocking, because that is what would slow an aggro deck down. I mean, Arboreal Grazer. I hate Arboreal Grazer as an aggro player just because it's a 0-3 on turn 1.
Yeah, and it ramps, and you know that it's like a harbinger of so many awful
Sure,
things
but mostly
well.
I just want to get damage through as quickly as possible. If I can get you down to 5 in an aggro deck in a good build, I should have enough, residual damage and lightning strike, whatever kind of effects to get you the rest of the way. Bone Crusher's Adventure with Stomp, stuff like that.
I mean, so essentially in Magic, sometimes you just get the nuts. That's just what happens in your hand. So in an aggro deck, you could get turn 1 Fervent Champion. You could get turn 2 Burning Tree Zerta. So sometimes you're just going to burn out, or you're just going to just absolutely roll your opponent.
Right.
But in other situations, you're going to burn out, or you could even, turn 1 Fervent, turn 2 Burning Tree, Zerta, and then all of a sudden your opponent has a Deafening Clarion ready for all of that, and now you're dead. Anyway.
Now you're done. Now you're done, exactly, because you dumped your whole hand onto the battlefield. I mean, it's the same thing with the Pioneer green decks. Okay, you're playing 4 1-mana dorks, and you're playing the lottery. You're hoping that on turn 2 you've got a crazy 3-drop. On turn 3 you've got a crazy 5-drop. And you're able to dump
and you're
that
hoping
in.
that your mana dork doesn't get shocked or something as well. So.
You just play your mana dorks and pull the slot machine and hope that the cards come up in your favor. That's kind of what Emissary is in Historic. Do I think that this might be one of the first cards we see unsuspended? Very possibly. However, we'll have to see if another aggro deck pops up. It's like I said, a healthy format. Look, every format is going to have a best deck. Sorry to tell you. Sorry to tell everybody. Oh my god, this deck is nothing but this deck. I get it. But you need an aggro deck, a mid-range deck, a control deck, and then you build some variants in from there. And so
I am happy to see Nexus go. I do think that that's a really healthy thing. Just an instant speed, take an extra turn, shuffle it back in. It just at this point is just...
Right.
No.
Well, I mean, combined with Wilderness Reclamation, this card is just a little too bonkers. I play it against.
And all of the usual suspects like Uro and Growth Spiral,
sure,
and all of those cards that are going to get you to this card super early.
Right.
I mean, it's
the only real problem I have with this card. I've played it against it a bunch. I've never played a deck with it in it, just because I don't want to go there, but I have beat it a bunch of times, and the only thing that... Right, I don't have the chance. I got 3 days because they don't put bans into Arena fast enough, and we're going to talk about that before the end of this. I just got to get my rant in there. But Nexus of Fate it breaks into this, you just have to sit there. And a lot of times these decks can't finish the game off very quickly. They need 8 turns to get 2 Brazen Borrowers onto the battlefield and all your stuff returned to your hand so that they can swing through unblocked however many times. Right. They need their 3/1s to attack and win. And that's, I mean, seriously, it's like once the Nexus circle happens, turn on Netflix and sit there and hope they clock themselves out so I can beat them in game 3. You know what I'm saying? So, yes, I'm absolutely glad to see it go, but I'm glad to see it go because it just created these game states where you're essentially not doing anything and you're not even playing Magic anymore. You're just sitting there. And, but I'm not happy that it was banned just because it's a really strong control card that can win games. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about Pioneer. We've talked
historic.
A lot about Historic.
Right.
This is a card that came out and immediately ended up on the first Pioneer emergency ban alongside, the Green Leyline
Abundance
and a couple other cards.
The card I'm sitting on 8 copies of back there because I didn't sell them fast enough.
Right, and I have a bunch of copies of Oath of Nissa that I'm going to be getting rid of in response to this, because I do think that in the future, and if you do have these cards, a little tidbit, I would say get rid of Oath of Nissa, because Oath of Nissa in Pioneer is only going to perpetuate the use of Teferi. Teferi is going to be in every single deck that runs green, because with Oath of Nissa, you could spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast Planeswalker spells. So all of those pesky, cheap Planeswalkers, they are going to be popping up in any green deck that comes out. This card is very, very, very powerful. It lets you fix mana. It gives you... you get to look at the top 3 as well.
Right.
There's a lot going on with it.
Now, with Oath of Nissa, with this Pioneer ban, do I think that this is good for Pioneer? Shoulder shrug. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Pioneer is essentially 2 decks. Inverter combo and Breach combo with Lotus Field.
Lotus Breach, yeah.
Are we suddenly going to see a rise in green decks like was popular right at the outset of the format? I don't think so. Those 2 decks, there's not even a lot of interactivity with the Breach, the Inverter combo. And so, once it happens, it happens. Once Inverter is cast and resolves, that's it. And so it's tough for me to look at anything happening to the Pioneer format, especially the way that I see Pioneer grinders on MTGO on Twitter talk about the format, how events aren't even firing anymore on MitGo during a pandemic when everyone is inside more often than they would be, whether you're quarantined or not. A lot of people are inside more often than they are in general. And I would expect that online formats, online games, those are going to be popping off like crazy. So it's wild to me that people aren't playing Pioneer, events aren't firing, and it's wild to me even more that, when we see, Pioneer's going to get a ban last week in the announcement for the announcement, we all go, okay, well, finally they're going to deal with Inverter or they're going to deal with Lotus Breach, maybe both of them, and Pioneer will open back up into the, cool, wide landscape metagame that it was when it first popped off. Right now,
here's a conspiracy check. They just want Pioneer to die so that Historic can replace Pioneer. Nobody's playing Paper Magic right now. That's no new information. Right. That's something that we're all dealing with. I think formats like Modern, formats like Pioneer, all of these formats that generally will have like a Grand Prix or a Magic Fest for them, they're not getting that. And so there's a bunch of people that have a lot of interest in EDH right now. There's a bunch of people that have a lot of interest in MTG Arena right now. MTG Arena is a lot more attractive than MitGo. MitGo is great. It has all of the Magic cards that you could ever possibly want. It has a client that can run them. It's outdated. It's a little bit buggy, but it works for what it does. MTG Arena is this very new, sleek, shiny, you play standard on it, you can do draft on it, but then you also have Historic, which is like the Eternal format, and I think that Historic just makes more sense to them. They can trickle in these cards over time.
Right.
They can handpick them, like Phyrexian Obliterator or the Shrines, or, we were just talking about Burning Tree Emissary. They can put what cards they want into the format. They can inject them how they want, and, you get a new kind of format, something that people can spend wild cards on. You don't have to go over and play on MitGo, and we also don't have paper. So is Pioneer dying? Maybe it is. I don't know, but until we bring back actual paper tournaments, until it does get the TLC that it needs, getting rid of these combo decks that prevent any kind of, brewing, any kind of creativity. I'm sorry to be long-winded. I'm just saying it's like... No, I don't really know what to do about Pioneer.
I completely agree. Jake, look, we looked at the format at the beginning of it very closely.
And we were excited about it. I was very excited.
Well, they banned Felidar combo right out of the gate. So it was like, all right, we don't want non-interactive infinite combos that just close the game out. And then they print Thassa's Oracle with Inverter already in the format, and they get a non-interactive combo that once it happens, you can't do anything about it. And now, even in the write-up down here, they're just like, we're otherwise generally happy with the shape of the metagame in Pioneer, with the most played decks each having strength and weaknesses against each other. So the most played decks, so Lotus Breach and Inverter have strengths and weaknesses against each other, meaning I guess that they both run blue so they can run Mystical Dispute and try and stop the other from doing their combo. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, an Inverter gets Thoughtseize, so it can go in and try to disrupt the other combo. I mean, dude, yeah, I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem super healthy. If you're big with Pioneer, please leave it in the comments. What do you think about the format? We want to hear from you.
Yeah, and I think that's going to
played it a little bit, but we haven't played it a lot recently, and I think it is because of these same decks popping up so much. You know, I played the SRAM deck, and it's a fun deck to play. But when you play against Inverter, you hope that you can find your Thoughtseize so that you can get one of the combo pieces. But even then, even in those certain situations, there's just so much inevitability to the deck because they get cards back. It's just, there's just a lot of ways for them to win.
Right.
And so it's, it does just kind of feel inevitable when you're playing against that. And good players are going to want to play the decks that are winning the most. So if you want to go in and you want to dominate Pioneer, why not play the decks that are winning?
I played Pioneer a lot until Historic became more of a thing with some of the packs that they've printed into Historic. And really the only thing that was edging me off of Historic was Nexus of Fate. I just didn't see why a card that they didn't want in Standard anymore was suddenly, but it was fine in Historic, and I just was confused about that. But now that that's out of there, I'm definitely going to be brewing in that format, mostly because I do want an Eternal format to play that's not Commander. And it's just with Pioneer I fell off of it. For the other bands down here, Arkham's Astrolabe, Modern Pauper. We don't play a lot of Modern Pauper, especially not anymore.
Yeah, we could speak to it briefly, but the idea with Astrolabe is that look at everything that you're getting on this card. When it enters, it draws a card, so it cantrips. It's very cheap, and it helps ramp. It helps, or not ramp, but it helps with mana fixing.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just very, very powerful, very cheap. If you know cards in Modern like Mishra's Bauble, these are the kind of cards that are really attractive because you're getting an effect for very cheap that's going to net you a card. It's all about velocity, and it's like what's going on.
It's like Gitaxian Probe, cards like that are essentially free in whatever deck. It makes it strictly worse not to start your deck with 4 Arkham's Astrolabe and 56 other cards, which makes
4 Mishra's Bauble.
Right.
Yeah,
and it also makes it strictly worse to not be running all snow basics. So suddenly you have to be using snow basics. I don't know. It's one of those cards that it's like Soul Ring and Commander. The discussion will always be, all right, you want to build a Commander deck. Okay, number 1 Soul Ring, and then the rest of your 99. Pick your Commander after that. Same thing with Arkham's Astrolabe. Sure. It's just like, it's got to be in all the decks. Then that makes you have to run snow basics. And it just, for me, it's one of those cards that, you don't really ever like seeing a card that has to be in everything.
And there is a Niv Mizzet deck that runs a lot of colors. It's a multicolor deck, and Astrolabe helps a lot in that build as well. And, also that deck is also running Oath of Nissa as well. I definitely think we're going to see an uptick in Oath of Nissa. And then also in Pauper, Expedition Map, which is going to help you tutor up any map ever. Expedition Map was originally printed as a common in Zendikar. You see it as an uncommon here, but in Zendikar it was a common. It helps you find any map. This is a huge enabler in Modern
any land.
As well.
It helps you find any land.
Any land. Any land.
You said any map twice.
Oh, any map.
Expedition Map helps you find any map you need. Okay, a map.
You're going to go find another map.
A map to the grocery store.
But no, and then Mystic Sanctuary is just really brutal in Pauper as well because you're getting back
your counterspell, your whatever instant or sorcery that you need back, you can get back just for having 3 or more other islands on the battlefield when it comes into play. Interesting B&R. We want to know what you think down below. Obviously, we play Historic and have played a lot of Pioneer. Those are the formats that we mostly are in tune with this B&R, so we had a lot of thoughts on those. And let us know down below if you play Modern and Pauper, and probably go find somebody who plays Modern and Pauper and they can tell you the exact decks that have lost cards because of Mystic Sanctuary and Expedition Map being banned. Like we said, all the YouTube stuff, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. We have got the special running on our Patreon right now. First edition stickers. Very limited quantity on these. Everybody who joins at any level gets one right now. Make sure you go look at our Patreon, see if you're a good fit there. Find us streaming. Jake, I'm tapped out.
Until next time, I'm tapped out.